Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly shir of the Zohar on the Torah, Be'ezras Hashem. And I believe that this is a year since we started giving the shirim. We didn't cover every parsha, although we touched upon many of the parshios, and we're certainly going to continue because each week brings with it new insight, even to the old Perushim of the Zohar, as the Arizal brings down that there's a new Perush to the Zohar each and every day. And therefore, we can read the same teaching from the Zohar over and over and uncover more insight. But nevertheless, there's so much more in each and every parsha. And we're going to go move forward again with Chayei, where we're going to go into a different element of the Zohar Kadosh, even though some of it is going to be based on the same teaching. We're going to go weiter to see what the Zohar Kadosh can teach us about facing reality with faith, with bitachon, with bittul, with anavo, with simcha, with yishuv hadas, with hiskabrus, with gevura, with the ability to overcome ourselves, with the ability to make a space for our wandering rather than to allow our wandering to take us out of our space, and to learn the secret of wandering along the path to draw down the illumination from above, like the Ramchal is teaching us that what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Chaverov were doing was that they were awakening a ruach of Gan Eden. They were drawing down breath. They were drawing down a pocket of air in which they can sustain themselves, like a teva of Noach, the imaginative space of protection, that fantasy place where each and every person has the capacity of creating for themselves their makom hamikdash, their place of emunah, their igul, that place of choini hamagel, who says, "I'm not leaving this circle until you do my desire, Kadosh Baruch Hu, because I uncover the depth of my desire to be connected to you." And each and every person has the ability to create those pockets of space and calmness within their minds. And that's what the Zohar Kadosh is teaching us. And we're going to continue seeing how it's going to give us insight into how to continue to dig down the path to find what it is that we're searching for. And what we're going to do this week is we're going to go through different areas of the Zohar HaKadosh on Parshas Chayei to uncover a particular thread that begins to emerge. But we're going to focus on a particular space in the Zohar, and when we get there, we'll see exactly what the text is saying. But it's going to be Daf Kuf Chaf Zayin and Kuf Chaf Ches. The Kuf Chaf Zayin is the 127 years of Sarah Imenu, and therefore we're going to be looking at Daf Kuf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph in Parshas Chayei. But to begin with, we're going to preface with the opening of the Zohar Kadosh itself, because surprisingly, when it comes to the Parsha of Chayei, that Vayu Chayei Mea Shana ve'Esrim Shana ve'Sheva Shanim, Rabbi Yossi Pasach v'Yamar. How does Rabbi Yossi open up the entire Zohar Kadosh for Chayei? Vayisu es Yona v'yatilehu el hayam v'ya'amod hayam me'za'afo, that they picked up Yonah ben Amittai, Yonah the prophet. They picked him up from the ship and they threw him into the sea, and the sea calmed itself from its rage. And the Zohar Kadosh continues a few elements of why it was that Yonah ben Amittai was so connected to the sea, and why it was the sea that tried to swallow him. And really, it shows how Yonah was being unified with the sea, because Yonah represented the fluid nature of the din that he was trying to run away from, the severity that was trying to run away from, and therefore the severity of the sea kind of swallowed him up, and the thing that he was trying to run away from ultimately came to meet him. And ultimately he descends down into the sea, and he enters into a state of slumber of sorts within the dag, in the may of the dag. And it's in that place that Yonah ben Amittai begins to uncover the entire process. And then the Zohar Kadosh goes into discussing Sarah and the Ruach HaKodesh of Sarah and the presence of Sarah, and then it goes from there to discuss the various manipulations of the ability to have Ruach HaKodesh, like we saw in last week's Parsha, that there's two ways of utilizing the mind. The mind can either be mevatel itself to draw down the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the mind, like the Bnei Kedem, can come to believe that it itself is the tool that brings about all of the shafa, and it could get stuck in the kfira, it could get stuck in the avodah zarah of feeling that the mind is a separate koach. And then the Zohar HaKadosh goes into these wondrous stories about the Tanaim who are walking along the path, and they encounter witches, and they encounter all sorts of malevolent forces that were manipulating this ruchnias. And it goes in, again, the Zohar Kadosh goes into the Isser of being a nachash nechoshes and utilizing the imagination for the wrong way, and manipulating the mind to kind of bring about a certain shefa in the world, all of the issues that come along with Bnei Kedem, like we saw from last week, and Rav Abba. And then the Zohar Kadosh goes into discussing Avram Avinu's encounter with Ephron Hachiti and the process in which he found Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Now, to try and draw a thread together to connect the narrative structure of what the Zohar HaKadosh is showing us here, I want to base myself on something that Rav Avram Slonimer points out very clearly in his Sefer Chesed LaAvram, and the Leshem Sheba Bachloma is masbir this, and the Zohar HaKadosh is really what teaches us this with regards to Afar. That there are Arba Yisodos in the world. There's Eish, Mayim, Ruach, and Afar. There's fire, there's water, there's air, and there's the dust. Now, whatever the orientation to the first three modalities of those Yisodos, the expressive foundational elements of reality, which are represented by the Yud, the Hey, and the Vav of Shem Havaya, those active principles in reality that are doing the work, that are active in their engagement, that are creative. Nevertheless, the lowest level is going to be Afar. Afar is Malchus. Afar is the lowest of the low. Afar is the place of deconstruction. It's the place of something breaking apart. It's the space of the irreducible remnants that get crushed down to the very dust of it all, the Afar. But it's that very same place that, paradoxically speaking, or the more that we come to understand the inner teachings, we understand that it's specifically from the bottom that the revelation at the top takes place. Afar, even though it's the lowest of the elements, nevertheless, it's referred to as Afar Demana Kula. It's really the foundation of all things. And that which appears to be lowest, it's that Evan Masu Habanim that is in truth going to be revealed to be Haisel Rosh Pina, that it is that thing that was despised because of its insignificance and the lack of its inherent value and creative value, because it appears to just be what it is in its natural abiding nature without changing, because Afar is a dead thing. Nevertheless, it's going to be revealed that that dead thing, that thing that appeared to be devoid of vitality, that place that appeared to be the knot in the process that kind of creates the struggle, is in truth going to be the place of the tikkun. And in that place of the afar, there's going to be the ikar giloy. It's going to be the mayim chayim. It's going to be the living water that flows forth from within the inanimate objects themselves, from the rocks, from the afar, from that which appears to be a doimim, that which appears to be inanimate in all of its unfelt and unmoving presence. This afar, this bittul, this self-recognition of being like the dust of the earth, which is what Klal Yisrael are compared to, is the recognition that at the one hand, I appear to be the lowest, but at the other hand, I also represent the birthplace of the highest expression. Now, Rav Avram Slonimer points out that when we're dealing with the principles of the mind, of Ratzon, of Chachma, of Bina, all of those things are oriented towards the original Yesodos, to the Yesodos of Eish, Ruach, and Mayim, because those are things that are active principles and active processes in the mind. Afar is the place of Dimyon. Afar, the dust of the mind, the lowest level of the mind, the area in the nape of the neck where the mind begins to give birth to the felt experience of emotions, meaning to say that the lowest part of the mind, the transition between the mind and the emotionality of the heart of the mind, is this lip, this edge, the afar of the mind, which becomes the highest level of the next level, is this place of dimyon. It's a place of imagination. It's the place where the mind is left with the capacity to create something from apparent nothingness, the place where we are most similar, so to speak, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Bora Yesh Me'ayin. The problem with Dimyon and the gift of Dimyon, which is also the basis of Nevuah and prophecy, is the fact that it has the capacity to create something from something that did not actually exist, and the ability to abstract and create new frameworks and new perspectives and new orientations that are built upon nothing other than the creativity of the mind itself, that are unmeasured and unheld back by the rigidity of nature and order and seichel, which is what Rav Sosalanter says when he says that a person is sturdy and locked down in their mind, but chafshi b'demyono, because in imagination a person can float away, and it's in that floating away and that abstraction that leads a person to misperceive the role that their ego plays. But it's also the very site in which a person can welcome in the proper gift of bittul, depending on the way that one measures their imaginative principle. Now, this imagination is the afar. Afar is the imagination. It's the lowest, but it's also the seat of the highest. It's that which needs to be contained, but also that which needs to be cultivated for the sake of cultivating a redemptive prophetic consciousness. When we look at the tzaddikim, and we're going to spend a lot of time this year, Mirz Hashem, talking about the sugya of dimyon and the mixed nature of it, how that ultimately reveals the keser ha'elyon, the secret of the choylem, the nekuda of the choylem that goes on top of the vav, which is the secret of the chalom, the chalom adaber bo, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to us by way of a dream, and that be'emes everything is a dream waiting to be niptar, as the Meshiloach points out that the entirety of existence is a dream, that we're meant to extrapolate and come to find the innermost meaningful nature of it, and that's only through the abstraction of the imagination. We're going to be speaking a lot about this year, Mir Hashem. But this afar, this lowest place, is really the place of the Dimyon. And when it comes to Avram Avinu wanting to find the burial place for Sarah Imenu, which represents Ruach HaKodesh, which represents the prophetic capacity at the heart of Nishmas Yisrael that expresses itself throughout the generations. What happens when Chayei Sarah dies? What happens when the light of Sarah dies? When that Ruach HaKodesh dies, it has to be buried in the Afar. It has to be buried in the Afar, meaning to say it has to be buried within imagination. Imagination is going to be the place where we're able to recuperate and maintain watch over, and the mournful awareness that this is something that belongs to us. And by way of mourning, we have the ability of connecting to it, and the secret of davening by Kivrei Tzadikim in the right way, and utilizing our orientation towards imagination and abstraction, etc., as the Mittler Rebbe points out in Kuntras HaShtachvus. But ultimately, burying the Ruach HaKodesh of Sarah within the Afar is revealing that the prophetic capacity of Ruach HaKodesh is going to find its waiting place until it's time to awaken it again within the Afar. And then when it comes back to the time of prophecy returning, as the tzaddikim have already begun to tell us, already beginning before the Shoah, with the emergence of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the Vilna Gaon, the Ramchal, the Rashash, all of the tzaddikim amitim who are mamshich, the Nahar HaYotzim Ye'edin Lamata Me'asar Tfachim, so that each and every one of us can drink to our heart's content in accordance with the pain and the difficulty that we're aware of, and the knowledge that the only cure that we have is going to be the Sam HaChaim, the water that flows forth from Eden, the water that flows forth from the rock in the future, and the secret of Mayim Chaim that are Yotzei Me Ha'even, and that secret of imagination, which refines the mind, which frees the mind. So it's in this place of Afar that we're going to find the Hisna'ari Me Afar Kumi, and that the Yakitsu Shochne Afar, that there's going to be awakening of the Afar itself. And as Rabbi Nachman points out, that we have to become like the Afar, which is stamped upon, which is Mevatel itself, but nevertheless it is from there that the diamonds are cultivated and that the beautiful gifts are cultivated. To be one who has a concern for others, but a deep sense of hishta'avus when it comes to themselves, not a passivity that allows oneself to be pushed aside, but a tranquility of not caring whatsoever and allowing oneself to step beyond l'chatchila ariber, whatever the issue is. That's going to be the hisna'ri me afar kumi. And Avram Avinu was the one who understood the secret of refining the afar, because Avram Avinu, we know, went into the afar. Avram Avinu understood that ultimately, when the rest of the world sees afar as something that's terrible, I understand afar de manakula, the dust, imagination, that place of leich lecha hadimyon, like we said in the name of the Basayan, and specifically the Basayan who went to Eretz Yisrael to come to a place of realizing that afar haaretz, every speck of dust in this land sparkles like a diamond, because Eretz Yisrael is the place of the refinement of imagination. Kol mi shadar be'Eretz Yisrael doim eloi sheyesh la'elikai, kol mi shadar b'chutz la'aretz. It's Doimelisha Ein Lo Elikai, Zak the Hiligat Tzadikim, Zak Rav Tzadok. What do you mean? There's a difference between the relationship to God in Chutz La'aretz and in Eretz Yisrael itself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealed in each and everything. Elamah, and the Baal Tanya says this Mufurash as well in Ma'amarim HaKtserim, that it is specifically in Eretz Yisrael that the Dimyon itself is also going to come to a place of being aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we'll be able to utilize the Dimyon as a kli to be Masig Nevuah rather than as something that needs to be fought against, because we have to protect ourselves from that slippery slide of opening our minds to the freedom and the possibility of the capacity of being a Jew with a neshama, shenasata b'tahirahi, and the tara sadas, and the ability to be machadish Torah, which is the utilization of our dimyon, which is the shirish of Torah Sheba'al Peh, where the imaginations and the murmurings of the heart of each and every yid, in accordance with the alignment of the mind, the heart, and the body itself, is a hamshacha yeshera from the das of Moshe to be megala new elements of Torah chadasha me'ititise, which is the secret of the Torah of Atikas Tima'a and the utilization of imagination itself. And so there's going to be this awakening. Avram Avinu awoke in this place, the Afar, that place of Emuna. Emuna, as Rabbeinu tells us in Torah Ches, in Likutei Moharan Tinyana, is fundamentally identifiable with imagination. Imagination and faith are both things that are built upon nothing. They suspend themselves in midair, and they're so fundamentally rooted that they don't need anything to root them. They are not contingent upon anything other than the Bechira Chavshis, the radical point of free choice that allows me to choose faith in this moment. That is the utilization of the Dimyon. That is why Adam is Melashon Medame, why the fundamental expression of the human being is their imaginative quality. And Avram Avinu, we know there's the story of Nachum Ish Gamzu, and Rav Nachum Ish Gamzu loses all of the money, and he's about to be killed by a goy the goyish king, who felt that this money was going to be saved in order to save his nation, and ultimately, instead of the chest of money that was found, someone came along and stole the chest of money of this Jew who was trying to convince the king to save the Jewish people. And so he had convinced the king because there was going to be this chest of money, and instead of finding a chest of money, they found a chest of dust. And Chazal say that he was about to kill the Jew and kill the entire community, and ultimately what happens is he says, no, 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 this is the dust of Avram Avinu. This is the dust of Avram Avinu that he used in the battle against the 4 and 5 kings. And when you throw it, it becomes weapons and it kills the enemy. And Kahava, and everybody was saved. The secret of the Ufar of Avram is that the Ufar itself is going to be revealed to be a vitality that is expressing itself from the lowest place, from that place of bittul. It's something that is not dependent on the reservoir from which it draws itself, because it is drawing from the endlessness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the secret of Avram Avinu, who came to be matakin the inyan of Dimyon. And with that introduction, which is also a tangent, but the tangent is the introduction, we can understand a little bit of why we're beginning the Zohar HaKadosh in Chayei with the story of Jonah. Jonah ben Amittai represents the capacity to draw down Ruach HaKodesh from the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, which is where he set out on his entire process of trying to save the Jewish people by refusing his mission to Nineveh. Simchas Beis HaShoeva, the place of Lav Yasan, of the mind, the Nachash Breach and the Nachash Aklason, which represent the two hemispheres of the mind and the bridge that holds them together, which is the secret of the Dimyon and the Das that comes from Chachma into Bina, into Das, and reveals itself in the secret of the Etzem Haluz, and the secret of the Dimyon de Kedusha. From that place, he draws down Ruach HaKodesh, and Yonah ben Amittai represents a paradox. Yonah, as Rav Aaron Halevi points out in the name of the Baal HaTanya, in the introduction to Shari Avoda, a very, very important teaching that's brought down also by the Maggid HaKadosh, but it's an idea that represents a fundamental expression and a curvature in the path of what the Baal HaTanya was doing, especially through the writings of his Talmud Mufak, Rav Aaron Halevi, that Yonah is a lashon of ona'ah, of fraudulency, of a fraudulent encounter, of something that is not exactly the way that it appears to be. And ona'ah and Yonah is representative of the fact that there's going to be a time in our lives when we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu where we can't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with absolute knowledge. We serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the imagination of absolute knowledge, where we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu ki'ilu. We allow ourselves to live with the mindset of mitoich shaloi lishma balishma, that from within imagination I will come to an element of truth. Oina'ah and Yona'ah means that I'm still at a stage where there's a certain fraudulency in my behavior, in my spiritual activity. Now, it's not because I'm trying to manipulate, but it's because I have not gotten to the place where I can ever possibly say that I am deserving of enter into a place of avoda. And therefore, in order to enter into a place of avoda, a person has to trick themselves and pretend that they're worthy of being in a place in avoda, even though there's a part of ourselves that knows we're never worthy. And then we can enter in with our wooden swords and realize that what we're doing is we're pretending with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we're playing on the stage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when we're putting on the garments and the different scenes and the different practices that we have to go through on a day-to-day basis, because we're actors on the stage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite wisdom, desire, love, connectivity, and redemptive process that is at the root of all parts of existence. And Yonah, and this ability to be fraudulent with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to not be fully there and illuminated in our minds, and not to be in the place of Lishma, rather than repressing it or denying its validity as a spiritual experience, we celebrate it. We say, yes, we know that we're imperfect. We know that we're still in the state of imagination. We know that we're still in the state of Yonah, of Oina'ah, of not being fundamentally aligned, of having an element of sheker in our our lives, of having all of the animalistic desires within our hearts, of the nefesh Bahamis roaring at the door. We're not there. We're not mezachich our lev. We're not mezachich our moach. We're not mezachich anything. Zakta Heilige Balatani says, how could it be that a person can read Tehillim? Because Tehillim talks about a person who wants to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And who can say that they want to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We're not there yet. Nobody's there yet. Not even the biggest tzaddik is there yet. Because even the biggest tzaddik has to come to the place of Kedushasi L'malim Kedushaseichem. That's the Iker Nakuda of the Iker tzaddik, is the dimyon, is the shorish of the nevuah, is the recognition of Yonasi Tamasi, that in the end of the day, I'm not fully there. I can't be fully there. But nevertheless, even though I can't be fully there, even though I can't be fully illuminated and aligned at this stage of avodah, nevertheless, Yonasi Tamasi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at it and he sees it as perfect. He sees it as beloved. He sees it as accepted. He sees it as beautiful. He sees it as a wondrous gift offered by the human being in their attempt to refine the mind, to reach a place of clarification and authenticity, yet to continue to be caught up within the battle against inauthenticity, which is a perpetual driven process of Ratzah V'Shov in the life of the individual. So it's Yonasi Tamasi, even though it's Yonah, even though it's by way of fraudulency, even though it's still a dream, even though it's still imagined, so nevertheless it's going to be beautiful in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the element of Yonah ben Amittai. Yonah is the language of Oinah. It's the language of something being fraudulent, something being not fully true. But at the same time, it's the son of something that's fully true, Yonah ben Amittai. So it's the secret of the redemption of imagination and the capacity of the Jewish imagination to redeem itself, to become a receptacle for Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah, when refined properly and when measured together with the secret of Seichel and Das, that it becomes a revelation of Emes itself in the secret of Yonasi Tamasi. And this is the whole process of Yonah entering into the belly of the beast, entering into the Lavyasan, and being mezachich, the Lavyasan from within, and illuminating and cultivating the ore of Shivas Yamim, the or kitov that rests at the base of each and every mind, and tzaddikim that are yoshev in Gan Eden v'itrosehem biroshehem, and that's each and every one of us. We have our itrim biroshehem, we have the chachma, we have the bina in our minds. We're just not aware of it. We have to allow ourselves to open up our imaginations to become aware and imagine our minds as being saturated with the moichin, saturated with what we need in order to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what Yonah ben Amittai was doing when he hollowed out the belly of the beast and revealed it to become the receptacle of divine consciousness, and then he comes back onto land in order to redeem the world from the bottom to the top again. That's the process of the refinement of Dimyon. And that's the Zohar HaKadosh starting off with Yonah ben Amittai being thrown into the sea. And then we go into the danger of this utilization of Dimyon. And then the Zohar HaKadosh warns once again about the trickery inherent within Dimyon, and that there's a very delicate nature when a person encounters the world of Dimyon and Afar, when a person encounters that world of the freedom of thinking that is created by the capacity to abstract new concepts that are connected to old concepts but are not necessarily rooted. There's a danger there. As Rav Tzadok HaKohen Mei Lublin points out at the very beginning of Machshavas Charutz, the entire gift of Dimyon is one and the same as the danger of Dimyon, because with Dimyon, a person can come to conceive of themselves as perfect and able to create worlds. And when a person feels that they're perfect and they don't have the koyach of the perfect God that comes down to them through their bittul and their recognition of imperfection, then a person, God forbid, mistakes the concept of Dimyon, and they come to see themselves as the one who's driving the show. And that's the beginning of a person and the self-deification of a person, which the Rishayim from every stage of experience go through, where the Dimyon is so thick and a person forgets about the bittul inherent within it, and they come to conceive of themselves as the sources of power, which is the shorish of all kishuf and the shorish of all of the isurim of engaging the mind and awakening imagination by any way other than Emunah and the Torah, etc. So we open up Chayei Sarah, the life of Ruach HaKodesh, and the need to bury Ruach HaKodesh within the Afar, within imagination. We start off with Yonah ben Amittai, and then we enter into a place of the warnings inherent within the utilization of Dimyon. And now we're coming to the place where we find Avram Avinu, who's able to utilize, who's able to connect deeply to the Nakuda of Afar. He's able to understand the depth and the secret light that's hidden in Afar. Because when Ephron Hachiti, Chevron, the place of Afar, all of the four holy cities, Yerushalayim, Sfas, Tiberia, and Chevron, all correspond to one of the Yesodos. Yerushalayim is Eish, Sfas is air, Tiberia is Mayim, and Chevron is Afar. Chevron, this place of the Chitim, this place of the groundedness, of the Ches, of the engraving on the bottom itself, that 400 nature of the Tuf itself, which is the 400 Zuzim that the 400 Zuzei Kesef that Avram Avinu pays for with his desire to buy this land, because the land itself and Dimyon itself represents the last part of the process. It's the tough, it's the last letter, it's the chakika in the seichel. Dimyon is the way things are actually engraved within the mind. It's the formation of the images within the mind, as Rav Avram Slonimer points out in the Chesed Avram. And it's the place of the chakika, which is what Rabbi Nachman points out in the first teaching, that the process that a human being has to go through is drawing chachma down into the malchus of bina, which is the nun. So you draw the ches into the nun, and then what we find is a tuf, because the tuf is the lashon of a chakika and an engraving. That's the tachlis of all things. To start from the tuf, to start from that place of the redemption of imagination, the elevation of the afar itself. And so now, once we are told about the power of imagination through the secret of Yonah ben Amittai, and then we come to understand the dangers inherent within the misusage of imagination as expressed in the warnings against Kishuf, we find Avram Avinu. We find the secret of how Avram Avinu came to purchase Ma'aras HaMachpelah. And right after the warnings about Kishuf and the misutilization of Afar de Manakula, of this element of imagination, of the Lech Lecha, so the Zohar Kadosh opens up and it says, Rabbi Yehuda Amar. Rabbi Yehuda says, and Rabbi Yehuda is Malchus, which is Dimyon, and so it's Dimyon that's opening up the power, the capacity of Biyad HaNeviim Adame, the utilization of Lumdus in the mind, Lidmos, to imagine, to create Svara. This is all a Malchus Dika Inyan on every level. It's the afar of the mind, it's the malchus of the mind, it's the malchus of tfuna, it's the lowest level of the moichin that become the highest level of the midos. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Rabbi Yehuda says, Avraham yada behahi ma'arta simana. Avram Avinu knew that cave, he knew the depth of that cave, the ma'ara, the depth of that cave, by way of a simon that he receives from there. He had received something from there, he marked it, he remembered it. He marked it as something that he had always wanted. When it came into his consciousness in a real way after Sarah Imenu was Nifteres, after Ruach HaKodesh gets buried, after Ruach HaKodesh passes away. So it came back into his mind, but it had always been held there. There was a simon there was a placeholder there. V'libe v're'use teman have. And his heart and his desire were always connected to that place, even before he needed it. Begin de mekadmat dana ayil leteman v'chama la'adam v'chavet tamirin taman. Because there had been a time prior to this, once upon a time, an ancient time earlier than the present moment, where Avram Avinu had gone up there and he saw Adam and Chava who were buried there. Umana have yada de inun have. And how did he know that this was Adam and Chava? And again, Adam and Chava is Seichel and Dimyon as well. That Adam is the Seichel of the Ma, of the Bittel, and Chava is the Yud Tes Chalakim of the Dimyon itself that brings a person to the Chaf HaDimyon. And so Adam and Chava are the unification of Seichel and Dimyon as well, which is why they're buried in Ma'aras HaMachpelah. And then you're going to have Yitzchak and Rivka, which also represent the refinement of Dimyon, and then specifically Yaakov and Leah, and not Yaakov and Rachel, because Yaakov and Leah is much more connected to Dimyon as well. And so how do we know that it was Adam and Chava who were buried there? Menahave Yada. The Inun Have, that it was Adam and Chava. Elachama de Yukna v'istakel v'itpatach chad pischa de ginsa de Eden Teiman. That Avram Avinu entered in and he saw an image there and he looked and he found an opening into the Garden of Eden. Dimyon is the opening. Dimyon is the gate. Dimyon is the shar. Dimyon is the awakening of the self beyond its restriction that enables it to begin to enter into the Garden of Gan Eden. And that image of the person that he saw was standing right next to him. And from here we learn that prior to a person's departure from this world, they see the visage of Adam. They see the original perspective of man, the process of man, of Adam, David, and Mashiach. They see it. They behold the sharash of all things. And nobody survives that, because if you see it, it means that it's been the time for your tikkun to be finished, to bezim yamit. Aval Avram Avinu estakel bey, he saw the shayresh in Adam Harishon, the role that he was to play. V'chama diyukne, and he saw the image v'itkayim, and he lived. V'chama nuhure de nahar b'ma'arta. And he saw, instead of death, he encountered a light that began to emerge from the ma'ara itself, from the cracks within the rock. V'chad shragadalik, and there was a singular flame that was illuminated. a singular flame that contains all flames. Kedein toyev Avram diyurich bahahu eser v'libe v'reuse have tadir b'ma'arta. As a result of this vision, as a result of this encounter with the flame in the cave and the illumination that comes from that zichuch of Adam, and the ability to be an Adam Male, which is the Aver Ma, which is the secret of Adam, which is Gematria Ma, the Anachnu Ma, the Afer, the Afer, the Afer. And as a result of seeing that, Avram Avinu loved it and he desired to be there and he wanted to own this place. And his heart and his desire, the Keser and the Bina, were perpetually on the Ma'ara. The Chochmah was elsewhere, but the Keser and the Bina were always on the Ma'ara. The desire of the heart and the desire of the mind. The Zohar Kadosh continues to describe Avram Avinu's process of taking this place from Ephron, which is the language of Afar, which is somebody who doesn't understand the ability to refine imagination, but someone who gets carried down by the imagination, because instead of allowing the imagination of the mind to be what becomes active, they allow the imagination of the heart to become that which is active. And just as the imagination of the heart, says Rav Avram Slonimer, is the lowest edge of the mind that becomes the highest point of emotions in the world, and that's the place of refinement, and that's the place of Leah, and that's the place of Lumdus and imagination, the Kedusha. There's a secondary form of imagination that goes down from the heart into the body itself, because the human being is composed of three compartments: the Seichel, the Murgash, and the Mutva. Muskal, Murgash, and Mutva. There is the intellectual component, the emotional component, and the habituated component. The edge, the bridge that gaps the bottom of the Seichel and the beginning of the Hergesh is one form of Dimyon. And when it goes to the connection between emotions and habituation, where the lowest part of the middle part, which is our emotions, becomes the highest part of the lower part, which is our habituated status, that's another form of Dimyon. And that's a lower form of Dimyon, which now becomes susceptible to receiving what the body is speaking about. And when the body wants perfection, and the imagination will then come to a place of misusing itself and coming to a place of conceiving of itself as its own power, etc., etc., etc. And that's what was going on with Ephron Hachiti, that they didn't have the refinement of the Afar, the Kedusha. They didn't know the gift that they were sitting on. They didn't know the value of the gift of the Afar. And the Zohar Kadosh continues to describe how Avram Avinu came to know this place. How did Avram Avinu come to know this place in the first place? Rabbi Eliezer says, B'shaisa da'ayel Avram b'ma'arta. When Avram Avinu entered into this cave, we said that Avram Avinu knew of this cave from beforehand. But how did he know of it beforehand? Heich Ayel. How did he go in? How did he come to find this place? What was the Hashkacha story behind it? Begin dahavei tabasrei dahahu agla. That Avram Avinu was a shepherd and he was chasing after a cow. He was chasing after a calf. He was chasing after that calf that ran away. Not a shepherd. He was chasing after the calf. The agla. The igulim, the place of dimyon. Dimyon, the Balatanya says, is an element of sheker in relationship to yashar, which is emes, because it operates in accordance with the laws of the hierarchy. On the level of igul, all of the order that we function in is revealed on a certain level to just be a dimyon. The igul is the place where all things are equal. And Avram Avinu was chasing after that place of the igul, of the igulim. Dichsev ela bakar ratz Avram, that Avram Avinu was running after it. There was a ratzon that wanted to reveal the secret of the bakar, which is the secret of the Nefesh Bahamis, which is Bisharasho, rooted in a place higher than the Nefesh Elokus, which is the Inyan of Seichel, because on a certain level there's a Dimyon that's rooted in a place higher than Seichel, because it brings about Nevuah itself. And that's what Avram Avinu was running after. Vahu ben Bakar arak ad hahuma arta. And this ben Bakar ran and it came to this tent. It came to this cave. The Ayel Abasre. And Avram Avinu followed it. He went in. The Chama Madachava, and he saw what he saw. He beheld what he beheld. This is the place of the Zichuch of the Afar, because Afar is fundamentally connected to what we see. It's the imagination, the creation of images, the formation of images in accordance with one's conception of reality, rather than the exactitude of what reality looks like on the outside. It is the inevitability of the translation, the interpretation, and the imaginative processing of consciousness itself. And Avram Avinu sees what he sees, the chama madachama. The eyes are the shorish of the dimyon, as Rav Avram Slonimer says, and they're connected to the heart, as we know that the Yetzer enters in through the eyes and goes down into the heart. What the eyes see, the heart contemplates, both for good and for bad, God forbid. And so Avram Avinu saw what he saw. What did he say? You can't say what he saw because it was what Avram Avinu saw. And to define what Avram Avinu would saw would mean that each and every one of us had to see what Avram Avinu saw. And then a text like this would be all but meaningless to awaken within ourselves the capacity to be like Avram. But by keeping it in the unobjective, subjective framework of Chama Madachama, he saw what he saw. Each person is armed with the freedom of reading into those very evocative words of Chama Madachama. What did a person see when they entered into that cave of their lives where they begin to see that shining light come forth to remind them that there's something that needs to be redeemed here? Chama Madachama, he saw what he saw. To begin the Ihud Sali Kol Yuma, there's another way of understanding this. And it's the same story because the Agla, the secret of the Igulim, the Bakar, the Nefesh Bahamis, this is the secret of Tefillah, this is the Chayei Sha'ah. So it's also imagination. As Rabbeinu says, all of the Shevach that we have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Pesukei de Zimra, it's all imagination. It's being Megala, the capacity of Dimyon. And so this other opinion of how Avram Avinu came to find this cave is not separate than running after the bakar. It's just a different way of understanding a chasing after this element of the shirish of the nefesh of Bahamis and the shirish of the igulim, which is the shirish elyon of the dimyon itself, where we're going to be mezachich the afar. To begin the ihud sali kol yuma v'yuma. Avram Avinu would daven each and every day. V'havei nafik ad hahu chakal. And he found himself up in this field. He found himself wandering out into this field, that there was a profound odor that was ascending from there. It was the reach of Gan Eden, the reach of the boigdav, the reach of the begida, the reich of the mind's capacity to trick that Yaakov Avinu encounters when he enters into the begadim of Esav, which is the secret of taking the imaginative lie and the sheker of Esav and utilizing it for kedusha to draw down the brachos of Yitzchak, which we'll get to be'ezras Hashem. And he smells that reach. And he saw and he beheld a visage of light that was ascending out of that cave. And he davened there. And it's there that HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke with him. As a result of this, Avram Avinu was desirous of this place of Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the zichuch of the Dimyon. Ma'aras HaMachpelah is the secret of the Shem Havaya of Ben, because the Shem Havaya of Ben is the Shem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that equals the Gematria 52, because it's simply the Miloi of itself. It's Yud K Vav K, and the Miloi is Yud Vav Dalid, Hey Hey, Vav Vav, Hey Hey. So it's literally just a replication of itself, because even the Vav Dalid is the Gematria of Yud. So one can read it almost as Yud Yud, Hey Hey, Vav Vav, Hey Hey, which is the doubled nature of the same thing. It's a doubling. It's not two things, it's the same thing but doubled over. The secret of being mezachich the dimyon, the secret of taking malchus, which is the limit point at which the human being experiences reality, and rather than allowing that to become the point of death where vitality and novelty die, allowing the mind to redouble itself in the secret of malchus to become the maras hamachpela, which is where the body itself takes the imagination, it sees outside of itself and it brings it back up in order to create new ways of orienting ourselves to the Torah, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to ourselves in the best ways imaginable, as we're going to see. Maras HaMachpelah is the Shem Havaya of Ben. So, Zak the Heilige Zohar HaKadosh. The Tiyufta Have Bahahu Eser Tadir. Avram Avinu's desire was perpetually on that place. And if he desired this so much, why doesn't he go there? Why didn't he go there in the first place? Why didn't he go already to Maras HaMachpelah? Why didn't he go directly into that place of the zichuch, of the Afar de Manakula, of the zichuch of the Dimyon? Begin Delo Yishkachalan. He wasn't paying attention to it. Because he didn't need it. Because he needed it now. Now I have to get it. In these two lines is a profound way of just orienting oneself to a perspective of thinking. I'm thinking about something. There's something that I desire. There's something I deeply need. So why don't I go get it? Because I don't need it. And when I need it, I'll go get it. It's a life based on a perspective of fullness rather than deficiency. A posture of deficiency and scarcity is perpetually rooted in there's not going to be enough, and therefore I have to make sure that I can hoard and have what I need because I'll need it later on. Avram Avinu is the perspective of shakai, of enoughness, of effulgence, of wholeness of saturation where I don't need it. If I don't need it, I don't need it. And when I need it, I'll have it. If it's there for me, I'll have it there. So I didn't have to go there yet. Tachazi, come and see. I Ephron have chame b'ma'arta ma have chame Avram ba lo yazvan leila almin. Had Ephron Hachiti saw what Avram Avinu saw in the secret of the cave, in the secret of this hidden space within the rock represents the Mayach, and the hidden space within the rock represents the place of Dimyon. Had Ephron Hachiti seen it, so then he would have sold it, because he would have understood the vitality of it all. When he looked at it, he saw nothing, because the utilization of imagination depends on the directionality of our imagination. And when we come to understand that it's biyad haneviyah madame, and that the imagination is meant to become a kli for emuna, and it's not meant to create a sense of ego, but rather it's meant to create the sense of not knowing, so then a person sees the vitality and the potential of it. But Ephron Achiti didn't have that ability, and therefore he was able to sell it for cheap. He didn't see anything, he grasped nothing there. Because it's only revealed to the person who knows what they're looking for. The light of imagination, the zichuch that comes out of Maras HaMachpelah, of that place of the burial place of Adam and Chava, of Sarah, of Ruach HaKodesh, which is going to be buried in the Afar, which is the source of the perseverance, the preservation of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah within the imagination necessary for Torah Sheba'al Peh, in the lumdus, in the dream of it all, in the capacity to abstract concepts onto a pre-existing text without claiming that this is exactly what the structured text is saying absolutely or explicitly, which is the reality of the thing, but rather allowing ourselves to live in a place of imagination as if this is what the essence of the text is saying, and in the capacity of the Jewish mind and the heart, the imagination of a Yid becomes a real thing, and it becomes a real ontological way of looking at reality, not because we've created it, but because that's the power of the mind itself. That's the power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has planted within our minds, that when we think properly and we're mevatel ourselves to our neshama, the neshama has the capacity of dimyon de kedusha, of true imagination, where the imagination of a Yid is to be medama milsa lemilsa, and to create new edifices of meaning that enable a person to allow the Torah to speak to the nekuda in their heart at that particular moment. But Ephron Achiti couldn't do that. The Avram Eskalia delay. Avram Avinu saw what he saw, and Ephron only saw what he saw. He saw nothing there because it wasn't his ability to refine it. So there are two people who are looking at the same exact thing, but one is seeing one thing and the other is seeing nothing. Avram Avinu is seeing everything, and Ephron is seeing nothing. How could it be? Because Dimyon is going to be in accordance with Biyad HaNevi'im Madame. If it's in the hands of the Navi, if a person wants to understand the depths of Bina, and they want to come to be Megala, the depths of Chachma through Bina in order to come back to Keser, then the Dimyon is going to be in their hands. Then they can go down into the world of Dimyon and ascend back up to be Mezachech L'Seichel. But if a person doesn't have the Dimyon, Biyad HaNevi'im, and all they have is imagination, then it goes to Lo Klum, it goes to nothing. All he saw was darkness there. All he saw was the opposite. All he saw was trickery and lies. And at that point, Ephron sells it to Avram Avinu, and he gives him what he wanted. And the Zohar Kadosh continues, and it says, and it explains, why is this cave that Avram Avinu found, the secret of the Zichuch of the Dimyon, the place of Adam and Chava, the place where the Ruach HaKodesh is buried, where is it buried? It's buried in the nature of the doubling. The nature of the doubling. Doubling is the capacity of imagination. It's the Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum, that Achas Dibra Aleichem Shtayim Zu Shamati, to take the simplicity and the reality and the ashrus of what is, and to allow our minds to reframe it and to refract it in the various ways of Torah Lishma, and through the various lumduses and the svaros that we receive from the tzaddikim in each day, which give us eyes to allow reality to shape in accordance with the dimyon de kedusha, to give us the ability, as the Zohar Kadosh continues to describe at length about the secret of Alma Da'asi, about the secret of Olam Haba, which is perpetually melting into a person's mind, and the secret of Yitzchak Avinu, and the secret of Rivka coming back into the tent and being mazachich, the lights that had left, and illuminating the light of Ruach HaKodesh again. The Zohar Kadosh and Chayei is so potent. But the line over here, where the Zohar Kadosh describes why we call it Ma'aras HaMachpelah. The Zohar Kadosh says that it wasn't doubled in the sense that it was two floors. Rabbi Elazar sha'il Rabbi Shimon Avoy. Rabbi Elazar asked his father Rabbi Shimon, "Hi ma'arta lav iu kafilta." This cave is not doubled. There's no two floors to this cave, as the pasuk says, "Ma'aras hamachpela v'kari krile lebasar ma'aras hasada." It refers to it as a field, so it's clearly not two levels. Sadeh machpela. Machpela kakari le. So how could you call a sadeh machpela? Clearly, the doubled nature of things doesn't necessarily mean a two-story level. Amar le hachi kari le ma'aras hamachpela keda amart v'yitein li es ma'aras hamachpela. This is why Rabbi Shimon says it's referred to as ma'aras hamachpela when he says, "Give me ma'aras hamachpela." Aval vadai chayecha lav ma'arta ihu machpela. But absolutely, you're correct that the cave itself is not what's doubled. There's no two floors to the cave. V'lav sadeh ikre machpela, and the field is not doubled either. Elahai sadeh u'ma'arta al shum machpela ikrin. They're referred to based on the secret of doubling, based on the secret of something being doubled twice. It's not that they are doubled, but rather they represent the capacity of doubling. Steha machpela vadai loy ma'arta. Iskapel tachtoyu. It's the secret of what's the secret of the doubling? What's the secret of something being doubled over into a singular place? Tachazi zaktahel gazayar Yerushalayim kol ara di Israel iskapel tachoise v'ihu kaime la'ela latata kagav nadoy Yerushalayim la'ela Yerushalayim latata. So the secret of this doubling, what does it mean? The place of the kipul. The kipul is a folding over. It's where there was an extended territory over a large swath of space, and then there's a condensation and a condensing of that space and that territory. It's simsum, a merging inwards, a closing inwards, a crumpling of it, a folding it over. And so now you're going to have much of the territory in a far lesser space. It's all contained within a place because now it's folded over itself. When I fold something over, what took up a lot of space prior to is now doubled over itself, but it takes up less space, but you have more of a potency in a smaller amount of area. And the secret of miotamachsik esamaruba, the little bit that holds the more. That's the secret of the etzamaluz. That's the secret of the dimyon de kedusha. That's the secret of Malchus. It seems to be a weakened space, but in truth, it doubles over itself. It's the revelation of the moreness, the mirror that comes from Malchus itself, because when things come down from the Seichel down to the Dimyon, so it's Or Yasher, but when things bounce back up from the bottom, back up to the top, it's going to be the Or Choser, which is going to be the reverberations of the imagination of Malchus going back up and creating a moreness to what was less prior to, and the secret of the Yud that come down from below to above, and the Yud that ascends from the Yud that come down from above to below, and the Yud that ascends from below to above is the secret of the Chaf HaDimyon, is the secret of the Balatanya in Igeres Chaf, which is the Igeres of Chaf HaDimyon, where he talks about the secret of the Or Choser that comes back up to be Mezachich, the Kalim, but so to look at the last words of the Zohar Kadosh. So why is it that this is referred to as Steha Machpela Yerushalayim, is the place of Yerushalayim Shalmala and Yerushalayim Shalmata, which are folded together, Malchus and Bina, the secret of Ruach HaKodesh, folding into Dimyon, Sarah being buried within Maras HaMachpela. Vadai loy sadeh kaful. It's certainly not doubled over. So why is it called doubled? Elarat to raza demila, the secret of the matter of the steha machpela. Vadai man machpela. Who's the secret of that which is doubled? Hey de bishmei kadisha de ihu machpela. The Hey in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's four-letter name, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei, Bina, and Malchus, that's the doubled nature. V'kula kaima kechad, but all of them are revealed to be one and the same. Malchus and Bina are unified together in the secret of Dimyon becoming the kisei for Ruach HaKodesh, Ubegina ka'amar ba'oirich sasim Hey machpela deloy have b'shmei kadisha as achra machpela bar ihi. This is the secret of Ha-machpela. It reveals the Hey machpela, the doubled Hey, the secret of Malchus going up to Bina, because the Shem Havaya has no double letter other than the Hey itself. Va'afal gavdim arta kefalta have vaday di'i ma'arta goy ma'arta. And even though this was a doubled cave, what it really means is it was a cave within a cave, as the Gemara in Eruvin on Daf Nud Gimel has a machlokas of Rav and Shmuel as to the doubled nature of the cave, whether it was two stories upon one another or it was two caves, one within the other, both representing versions of thinking, the Eichus and the Kamus, looking from a perspective of above to below, which is the Hanhaga of Oirich, where there's a hierarchical reality, or it's going to be the Hanhaga of Oivi, which is going from the depth perspective, moving inwards. And both of the Shitos are correct, obviously. And it's from that place that inwardsness within the inwardsness, the cave within the cave, the imagination within imagination. Aval al shum achar ikre ma'ara sadeach machpela kamoid itmar. And it's really, this is the only reason that the ma'ara was referred to as doubled. So we have, again, I know this was a different type of shear, but we have the Zohar Kadosh open up with Yonah, teaching us about throwing Yonah into the sea, and how Yonah, very often, the dimyon, the oina'ah, the lo lishmakite of it all, the oina'as devarim, the fraudulency of it all. Nevertheless, it's tamim. And how do we do that? By throwing it into the yam, by throwing it into the shayrish of the dinim, into the malchus itself, into the place of bina that's going to be mamtik, and it's going to allow the levyasan to come along and swallow up the dimyon, where the dimyon becomes mezuchach again. That's the secret of the ruach hakodesh that was nishav in the simchas beis hashoeva. And then once we are introduced to the secret of the dimyon, we have to be warned about the dangers of the dimyon and the maisa kishuf that comes along with it, and God forbid the thoughts of power that come along with the utilization of imagination. And then we go into the process of Avram Avinu refining imagination and running towards the Afar and running towards the significance and searching for that burial place to bury Ruach HaKodesh, and it's going to be in the Afar de Manakula based on the Chesed Avram Schus Yogan Aleinu. And then we saw how this leads us back to the secret of the Maras HaMachpelah, which is the doubled Hey of Bina and Malchus, or the Shem Havaya of Ben, which represents the lowest part of the self, which is in truth going to be shown to be the revelation of the highest part of the self, because that's the secret of Avram Avinu's journey. It's the secret of Lech Lecha, Lech Lechaf Hadimyon. And we know that in the Bechia of Chayei Sarah, in the Bechia of Chayei Sarah, which is revelation of the death of Ruach HaKodesh, because Sarah was that she was Shayra Ruach HaKodesh. When Ruach HaKodesh dies and it gets buried in the Dimyon, so there is a mournful process. Avram Avinu, who's trying to be Mevatel himself like the Afar, has a mournful process over it. But when we look at the Pasuk, we see that the Chaf of Livchoisa to eulogize her is small. And even though there's real pshatim to it, in accordance with what we're saying, we can say that when Avram Avinu was mourning the death of Ruach HaKodesh and the need to bury Ruach HaKodesh within Dimyon, so every part of the desire for real Ruach HaKodesh is mourning except for the Chaf HaDimyon. The Chaf HaDimyon can't fully mourn properly because it knows the secret that it maintains the secret of holding the light of Ruach HaKodesh. And therefore, even in the mourning of Sarah, even in the death of Ruach HaKodesh, there's a secret of the Chaf HaDimyon, which is waiting, anticipating, like the secret of the patience of Keser, and there's the Keser is the Chaf. It's the secret of imagination can't fully mourn the death of Ruach HaKodesh, because the death of Ruach HaKodesh allows imagination to become what it needs to become to reveal the power of the unification of imagination and the Seichel, which is the unification of Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. And it's the secret of Moshe Rabbeinu, who had this chus of the Chachma and the Nevuah biyachad. And Be'ezras Hashem, we should be zeichet to daven for refinement of the imagination, to clarify all of the negativity of the imagination, and to allow our imaginations to be cleansed and refined and built up, so that we can allow them to become the kisei, to be the seat, the kisei hakavod, to reveal the secret of nevuah that each and every one of us have the shaykhs to, and to reveal Shavis Hashem the Negdi Tamid and L'cha Amar Libi Bikshu Panayas Panecha Hashem Avakesh. And just like Avram Avinu had the desire of his heart and his mind there every moment, each and every one of us should be machaket to the point of being mezachich, the last elements of our amuna and our dimyon, and to be medama milsa lemilsa, to look at the tzaddikim and to try and mimic the tzaddikim, to look towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu and try and be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, never forgetting that we're mimicking, to fight with our swords, but never to forget that they're wooden swords. And in that way, we can uncover the Maras HaMachpelah, the secret of the or that's mispashit from Gan Eden at each and every moment of a person's life. Be'ezras Hashem.